By day, Devin Langford was the quintessential golden child, clean-cut, articulate, disarmingly polite. Professors adored him. Neighbors bragged about him. His parents, Grayson and Lacey, displayed him like a prized heirloom. Devin shed the suffocating mask of perfection. His laptop became a portal into a world where shame had no dominion, where dominance and surrender tangled like smoke in candlelight. He wasn't addicted to sex, not exactly. He was addicted to being seen, truly seen, without judgment. The clicks of a riding crop, the whispered mantras of control, the hypnotic rhythm of breath and restraint. It was there he came alive. But he never told Evelyn, his girlfriend of 2 years. How could he? She was lightning in heels, seductive in her chaos, but volatile and unpredictable. He feared what she'd say, feared she'd twist his desires into something dirty. So he compartmentalized, obedient son by morning, restless voyeur by night. He told himself he could manage the duality, that one day he'd find someone who could handle all of him. But the truth was simple. Devin was playing with fire, and he didn't even smell the smoke. Their passion was volcanic, unpredictable, consuming, and destined to leave scars. From the outside, Devin and Evelyn looked like any other dazzling college couple, smiling at parties. She had this wild energy that could turn a library into a strip club with one whisper. She loved teasing Devin, playing him like an instrument, slow and sensual, then rough and relentless. Their sex was not tender. It was territorial. They'd lock themselves in her tiny apartment for entire weekends, blinds drawn, phones off, their bodies tangled in every corner of the space. She called it worship, though it often felt like war. Devin lost count of how many videos Evelyn filmed. On her phone, on her laptop, sometimes perched on a bookshelf while she rode him with a look that dared the camera to blink. He didn't protest. He was enthralled. It wasn't just about lust. It was about surrender, about being known in ways he never allowed anyone else. But with each climax came a creeping dread. Evelyn had a hunger he couldn't quite decipher, one that flickered with cruelty beneath the euphoria. She'd whisper things like, "You'd die for me, wouldn't you?" and kiss him before he could answer. He told himself it was just part of the thrill, that their friction was fire, not warning. But somewhere deep inside, Devin knew their intimacy wasn't just messy, it was dangerous. The unraveling began on a rainy Thursday. The kind of gray ski day that makes everything feel slightly out of tune. Devin had picked up Evelyn's favorite almond croissants from a bakery 3 blocks out his way, planning a sweet surprise to cap off a grueling week. He let himself into her apartment with the key she'd once slid into his palm after a night tangled in sheets and whispered promises. The silence struck him first, unnatural still. Then came the moan. Not hers, not his. It was a guttural sound, animalistic wrong. He stepped into the bedroom like a man walking into a gunshot and found Evelyn, bare, arching, wild-eyed, writhing under a stranger. A man twice Devin's age, sweat slicked and smug. Marcus, her boss. Time froze. She screamed, not from shame but irritation, like he had the audacity to interrupt. Devin didn't yell. He couldn't. His voice was buried somewhere beneath the disbelief. Evelyn pulled on a robe, marched toward him with fire in her eyes and venom on her lips. "You think I owe you something? You think I haven't felt trapped in your boring little fantasies?" The humiliation was nuclear, but it didn't end there. Within hours, Evelyn had twisted the narrative, claiming Devin had become controlling, obsessed, even dangerous. By sunset, he'd been reported to campus security. By midnight, the police were at his door. His desire, once a secret sanctuary, had been recast as depravity. Evelyn didn't just cheat. The flashing lights outside Ike's apartment cast sickly reflections on the windows, and the cuffs around his wrists bit into skin still warm from disbelief. Evelyn's accusation wasn't just devastating, it was nuclear. She had twisted their private intimacy into a crime scene, rebranding rough kisses and whispered permission into abuse and manipulation. At the station, the officers looked at him like he was filth wrapped in a cardigan. No one cared about consent, about context, about the blurred lines they'd drawn together. Devin sat beneath flickering fluorescent lights, his name turning to ash with every question. And then came the call. His father, Grayson, stoic, commanding, answered with silence that screamed. Gloria, his sister, bold and sharp, was the only one who tried to resist the purge, but they silenced her, locked her phone, erased the bridge. Devin was officially exiled, not just from his family, but from everything he'd built. His future evaporated in a single storm of betrayal, lies, and the brutal price of trust misplaced. Devin disappeared like smoke slipping through cracks, unannounced. Untraceable, unmoored. He left behind his university ID, his apartment key, even a framed photo of him and Evelyn taken on a rooftop bar during better times. All of it became radioactive, reminders of a life that no longer belonged to him. He boarded a midnight bus headed 3 states away with nothing but a duffel of clothes, a cracked phone, and a hollow ache where his identity used to be. The new city was loud, indifferent, and perfect. He found a room above a pawn shop with peeling paint and a bed that creaked in protest. It was solitude, and he welcomed it like an old friend. He got work under a fake last name, bar backing at a dive by night, cleaning office floors by early morning. Days blurred into weeks. Sex became transactional, anonymous. Motel rooms, first names only, fleeting skin-to-skin relief, followed by a deepening void. He wasn't chasing love. He was erasing himself through bodies, through sweat, through the throb of someone else's desire. But no matter how much he gave away, nothing filled the hole Evelyn left. Every moan reminded him of how she used to whisper, "You're mine." Every bed reminded him of the one where she broke him. Loneliness became his constant rhythm, the only companion he trusted. And yet, beneath the exhaustion, a flicker of something still pulsed, a stubborn ember refusing to die. Somewhere in the haze, Devin knew this wasn't the end, just a brutal, burning rebirth. Elias entered Devin's life like a soft breeze through a smoke-filled room, quiet, unassuming, but impossible to ignore. They first crossed paths in the early morning haze of a corner cafe. Both sleep-deprived, both clinging to the bitter salvation of caffeine. Elias had ink-stained fingers, a lazy half-smile, and the kind of presence that didn't demand attention. It earned it. For weeks, they existed in parallel. Nods at the espresso machine, brief exchanges over wobbly tables. Then one rainy afternoon, Elias noticed Devin shaking in a corner, soaked and pale. "You okay?" he asked, voice low and disarmingly warm. That was the first crack in Devin's armor. From there, their connection bloomed, not in grand declarations, but in quiet consistencies, shared playlists, exchanged glances over dog-eared books, the way Elias always remembered how Devin took his coffee. When they finally kissed, it wasn't fireworks. It was a deep exhale after years of suffocation. Their first night together was slow, reverent. Elias asked for consent, like it was a sacred language. His hands moved like he was learning, not taking. No cameras, no games, just skin and soul, intertwining in a space that felt like safety. For the first time, Devin cried after sex, not from shame, but from the sheer unfamiliarity of gentleness. Elias didn't flinch. He held him tighter. Every morning after, Devin woke tangled in sheets and arms that didn't let go. Elias wasn't a fantasy or a fix. He was a new rhythm, a chance not just to survive, but to feel again, whole wanted, real. It started with a single anonymous blog post. Devin, late one night, poured his truth into the glow of his laptop screen. He didn't use names, didn't seek pity. He just told the story. How a woman he loved weaponized their intimacy. How the people who were supposed to protect him abandoned him instead. The post went viral within days. Shared across forums. Reblogged on advocacy sites. It resonated with others who'd lived the same nightmare in silence. Messages flooded in, some angry, some broken, some grateful. "Thank you for giving words to my pain." One woman wrote, "I didn't think anyone would believe me either." The community became his second skin. Devin began attending support groups, first virtually, then in person. At one, he met a man who'd spent 6 years in court proving he never laid a hand on his accuser. Another, a trans woman disowned by her family after being falsely labeled a predator. These weren't just stories, they were lifelines. Devin became a speaker, then an advocate, and eventually a quiet force behind a growing movement for due process and restorative justice. The first time he stood in front of an audience and read his story aloud, his hand shook. But Elias was in the front row, eyes steady, smile unwavering. And afterward, people approached him not as a victim, but as a survivor. Devin realized then that he hadn't just rebuilt his life. He was helping others rebuild theirs. He had turned his scars into bridges. his silence into thunder. The letter came in a cream-colored envelope with his father's name etched in cold, practiced cursive. Devin recognized the handwriting instantly. Grayson's penmanship hadn't changed since the birthday cards of his childhood. His hands trembled as he opened it, expecting guilt, perhaps a plea. What he found instead was a thinly veiled summons cloaked as remorse. We've been doing the work, Devin. Family therapy, reading, reflecting. It read like a corporate apology, structured, sanitized, and utterly devoid of the blood-and-bone truth he needed to hear. Lacey's postscript was more emotional, scrawled like an afterthought. We miss you every day. But Devin could still hear her silence in the interrogation room, the way she avoided his eyes. He brought the letter to therapy, placing it on the coffee table like a relic from a past life. Denise, his therapist, listened as he read it aloud, then asked, "What do you want from them now?" Devin sat in silence, the question hanging heavy in the air. What he wanted was impossible. A time machine, a reversal, a mother who chose to believe her son, and a father who didn't care more about reputation than truth. So he wrote back, not with venom, but with finality. "I'm glad you're working on yourselves. I hope it brings you peace. But I'm not ready, and I don't owe you my healing." He signed it with no love, no bitterness, just his name. And for the first time, it didn't feel like cutting ties. It felt like choosing peace over permission, wholeness over nostalgia. Devin stood at the podium, palms damp, throat tight, a stack of note cards trembling in his hands. The room was dim but full, volunteers, survivors, advocates, all sitting with stories heavy on their backs. This was his first public speaking event, hosted by a support network for the falsely accused, and every step to the stage had felt like walking barefoot over broken trust. Elias had kissed his cheek before the event, whispering, "Just breathe. You're not alone." That anchored him. Devin took a shaky breath, looked out into the sea of strangers, and began. "There was a time when I believed silence was survival." He didn't tell the story like a victim. He told it like a man who had been scorched and rebuilt. He spoke of Evelyn, never by name, how she'd taken something sacred and twisted it into a weapon. He spoke of abandonment, the cold eyes of his parents, the devastation of being accused and discarded in one motion. He spoke of rage, of shame, of crawling his way back from the hollowed-out shell he'd become. And then he spoke of Elias, of healing, of rediscovering his worth, not through validation, but through resilience. When he finished, the applause didn't thunder. It swelled, warm and steady like a tide. One woman came up afterward, tears in her eyes, and said, "You just said what I've been too scared to admit out loud." Devin nodded, understanding. In telling his truth, he'd unlocked something bigger than himself. He hadn't just reclaimed his voice, he had amplified theirs. The ring sat in Devin's pocket like a pulse, heavy with hope and hard-won healing. He and Elias had escaped the city for the weekend, hiking through golden leaf trails until they reached the overlook where they'd first shared a kiss in the chill of early spring. Now autumn burned across the sky, crimson, amber, alive. Devin's voice trembled as he dropped to one knee, not from nerves, but from the sheer gravity of the moment. "Will you keep choosing me, even when it's hard?" he asked. Elias didn't hesitate. "Yes." Every time. The ring nearly slipped from Devin's shaking fingers, but laughter filled the space before tears did. It wasn't just a proposal, it was a reclamation. A vow that Devin's past wouldn't define his future. They planned a small wedding, filled with chosen family, love untainted by bloodlines or expectations. Devin no longer needed the approval of those who once silenced him. He had Elias. He had purpose. And for the first time, he didn't feel like he was moving on from something. He was stepping fully into something new, real, and radiantly his.